Hi there and welcome back. This is Jennifer McGuire and I'm glad you're here. In this video, I'm sharing many different ways to create layered window cards. These are cards where you can see through a window on the front and see multiple layers. So most of these cards have multiple folds to them. This is a great technique for you to get a simple card but a unique design. So it has something special. I have many examples in many different sizes, so I'm hoping that by showing all of these, you can try one of them yourself. I have some fun dies I'm using today, but I will also demonstrate how to do this technique with basic dies that you might already have. Okay, so I'm going to start with a very simple card, but it's got bold colors. The reason I'm starting with this one is the bold colors are easier to see the folds and how it assembles, so I thought I'd start here. This is a mini Slimline card. I'll be using different Hero Arts Looking Glass die sets today. These are 3 window dies that go together. This particular set is the Underwater Reef. I'll be using some other theme Looking Glass dies later in this video, but remember I'll also use basic circles at the end. For this particular card, I used 4 colors of teal, going from light to dark, but you could use whatever colors you want. We're going to start with the 3 lightest colors, so I'll take out the darkest one and set that aside. Those 3 lightest ones will cut to 3 3/4 inches by 6 1/4 inches. So each of those are cut to the same, and I'm scoring each of these at 3 1/2 inches. So all of these pieces will just have that little 1/4 inch flap over on the side. This will allow us to assemble the card very easily, and it's best to do the scoring and folding at the beginning so you know how your card goes together. You can use absolutely any cardstock for this. I do recommend heavyweight since it'll be our note card's base. I'm using Hero Arts cardstock today. I love their colors. Okay, now I am starting with the lightest piece first. That'll be the front of my card. But again, you can do whatever colors you want. I'm going to position this so that that little flap is on the left side. Now centered on that big area there, I'm using the first of those Underwater Reef dies. And I'm centering it towards the top center. Again, you can see that little flap is over to the left. And I'll run this through my die cut machine. So here you can see the window that we get. I really like these dies. I love fish and underwater themes, so this is right up my alley. Now it's time for the second panel. So this is just slightly darker than the first one. Now this time I'm taking that slightly darker panel and I'll put the flap on the right side. See it's over there on the right? I'm going to put this behind the lighter piece. The edge of the lighter piece on the right will line up with the crease against the flap of the darker blue. So you can see it's lined up over there. I then will trace the window onto the darker blue piece. You don't need to trace all the way around, just get each of the sides so you know where to line up your next window die. So now I'm coming in with the next Underwater Reef die, and I'll just line it up there. Doesn't have to be perfect. These dies are very forgiving. Again, you don't have to have this particular die set. I'll show you another option at the end of this video. Okay, so now I'm going to run this blue piece through my die cut machine, and now I have this window. Notice again, the first piece we cut has the flap on the left. This piece we just cut has the flap on the right. You can see how they line up there. Okay, now it's time for the third piece. So this is 1 shade darker of that color. This time we're going back to having the flap on the left. All right, so I will line up the crease of the darker blue, the flap over there on the left, with the edge of the lighter blue. And I will once again trace the window onto this so we know where to position the third and final Underwater Reef die. So I'll line that up there. Again, the flap on this piece is on the left. Now I'll run that through, and now we have our 3 pieces of the card with the windows cut on each. Each window is a little bit different, and they line up, creating this really cool underwater scene. It's very easy, and I'm not going to add much else to this card, so it doesn't take that long to put together. And by doing this first card in the different colors of blue, it's easier to see how it comes together. Okay, now we need to glue this lighter blue piece against the slightly darker blue piece. But there's one thing I really recommend doing. On that one edge of this darker blue piece, I'm just going to cut off a tiny bit, not even 1/8 of an inch. It's the side opposite of the flap. That's just going to allow the pieces to fold together better. You'll see me do that a few times throughout this video. Now, on the inside of that little flap on the lighter blue, I'm putting strong adhesive. You could do double-sided tape here, but I like to use Gina K Connect liquid adhesive because it gives me a little bit of time to wiggle it and get it just right, and then I'll be sure it'll dry well and hold its place. So I'm putting the edge of the slightly darker blue piece right up against the crease on the back of the lighter blue piece. So the flap is behind the darker blue. And I'm going to really press that down and make sure that that is secure. So once we have that pressed down, you can use a bone folder to really press it down. We can go on to the next piece. Okay, so now we have the darkest blue piece. Once again, I do this throughout the video. I'm going to cut a little hair off of the main part of that darker blue, just so everything folds together nicely and nothing sticks out. So I'm cutting a tiny bit off of this side here, less than 1/8 of an inch. It's the side opposite of where the flap is. Now we can glue these together. I've opened up this medium blue piece. The flap is facing up and I'm putting adhesive on it. Now I will take the edge of the darker blue piece and line it up with the crease of that blue. So watch, I'll line up this darker blue with the crease on the medium blue piece. So I'm just piecing together this card that will accordion fold out. By piecing the different colors together, it keeps our card from being too thick and it allows us to do multiple colors. So you really want to press that down and make sure that adhesive sticks. So now we just have one last piece and that is the back of our card. You could leave it so it's see-through, but I'm going to put a back piece on there. And that's the darkest color. It's a navy color. This navy piece will have no score lines on it and I cut it to be about 3.5 inches wide by 6.25 inches tall. It's the size of what the note card will be in the end. I'm putting glue on that dark blue flap and then gluing the navy strip onto that flap. So now you can see how all the pieces go together to create this accordion fold card. The overall size of this card when folded will be 3.5 inches by 6.25 inches, which is a mini slimline size. I will do other card sizes throughout this video if you prefer not to do a mini slimline. Now there's not much left to this card, but I did want to add some texture to show through that window. So I used an older Hero Arts Wave and Sea confetti die. I love this one. And I cut it from navy cardstock. Then I'm using a square die, just a basic square, to cut a little area out of it. I then put glue on the back of that, and I'm gluing it to another solid square of the same size and color. This is just going to be a little spot to put behind our window on the inside of our card. I really like the texture that you get from doing a background die cut on a piece of cardstock of the same color, and that's what we've created here. Now, just to add some shine to it, I'm using my Tonic Shimmer Pen and adding that to the top layer. Now I can put adhesive on the back of this and glue it to the inside of our card so that this piece will show through when the card is closed. Now you could do all kinds of decorating to this card. I wanted to keep it simple for this example, but you could add so much to it. This design would be great for creating a really big scene card. Okay, now for the little fish, I dug through my stash and I found this older Hero Arts Manatee stamp and die set. I thought that little fish was the perfect size. So I stamped and colored him 3 times and cut him out and then added them into the window. I wanted one to show through the window and then the other 2 to only show when the card is open. So I'm gluing them so that they're hidden when the card is closed. I also added a few little iridescent gems to look like bubbles around the fish and around the window of the card. For the sentiment, I used the new Hero Arts Royal Angelfish stamp set. Now I stamped the fish and a coral from this set. It's an easy layering stamp set, just to show you how beautiful the results are, but I decided not to use those pieces. I will in a future video. But here is this completed card. It fits in a mini slimline envelope, which I'll link to below. You can see the little fish through the window and all of those layers, along with our white heat embossed sentiment. Then you can unfold the card, and there you can see all the different colors and the 3 fish inside. Again, you could add a lot to that scene, but I decided to keep it simple, and there is plenty of room towards the bottom to write my personal message. So this card design, you could skip the layered windows if you wanted to. You could just do a basic window the same size through each panel, Or you could skip the window entirely and just do an accordion fold mini slimline card. Now, in the rest of this video, I have lots of different folds and sizes, but this kind of gives you an idea of what we're headed for, where you have a layered window that creates a scene. Now, before we go to the next example, I wanted to show you the other looking glass die sets from Hero Arts that work great for this technique, because I'll be using a combination of the dies today. On the left, those 3 dies are the Looking Glass Rain and Clouds dies, and on the right, we have the Looking Glass Day or Night dies. These 2 particular sets are my favorites because they cover a lot of different needs. You've got the clouds, the sun, the night sky, and you can combine those with other small dies or small stamps you may have. There is also the Hero Arts Looking Glass Canyon Lands die. This has the tree, the background, and then grass. I'll be using the grass later on, but look at how you could team it up with the sun from the last set. They again are all sized the same. Next up, we have the Looking Glass Lighthouse die set. So you have these 3 dies here. I'll be using the ocean and the sailboat one later in this video. And then this set I didn't actually use today, but it is a Paris theme. And you could actually skip the Eiffel Tower if you want to and create a little park scene with them. Now, I thought this was really smart. Hero Arts also came out with alignment stencils. There is one that has the opening there, and it has little engraved marks that help you center it on an A2 or A7 card, either horizontal or vertical. A handy tool, and I'll use it later in this video. I use it for stenciling and inking, but you can use it to help you line up your windows on your cards if you prefer. Then there's also the alignment tool for a slimline card there on the left. Okay, let's go to another example here. This time I have a fun fold card with the layered windows, and the overall size of this card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. I used 2 of the layering die windows, and then I also got creative to create my own little rainbow for the scene inside. For this particular card, you'll start with 2 pieces of cardstock that are 4 3/4 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall. And you'll score them both at 4 1/4 inches. So you'll end up with a small flap on the side of both of them. You could do any color cardstocks you want. I'm going with white for both of these pieces, and we'll add some other color later on. These 2 white pieces will be attached to the base of our card. And the base of our card is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches, no scoring. Here I have it in light blue, but I end up changing it to white later on. But just to show you where we are headed, you have the 2 flaps that open, and they'll be attached to that back piece. Okay, let's start by doing the window on the front of the card. I have a piece here, and it has the flap over on the left. I'll start with our front window die and die cut that from the top center. Now we'll take the other piece, this time with the flap on the right. And we'll just line up those main sections there so the flaps hang off the edge. And I'll just hold these together and take the other window die and slide it behind the window. You could trace it like we did before, but this is just another way to do it. You could also use those alignment tools that I showed you earlier, but this is just what made sense to me at the time. So I'll just line the outside edge of this window die with the window we've already cut on the front. Once I have it in place, I'll just put a piece of tape there to hold it and then run that second piece through the machine. Again, the flap is over on the right. Okay, so here you can see how the 2 windows line up nicely. Now I wanted to do some stamping on the front panel of the card, but I didn't want my clouds to be stamped, just everything around it. So I'm putting some pieces of reused tape over the clouds, and now I'm stamping on the card front with the new Hero Arts Sunray stamp. I love this stamp. So I have a sticky mat inside of my MISTI, and that will hold my card in place as I stamp on it. I like to line up my card on the stamp as you see me do on the right. Then I close my MISTI upside down, flip it over, and now my panel will stick to the sticky mat in the perfect position for me to stamp. I'm inking this up with a soft vanilla ink, and it was a little light, so I'll double stamp that. And this will just add a little bit of interest to this simple card design. Okay, next I wanted to add a gold frame around the front window. Here's the trick that I did. I used the same die to cut from gold cardstock, and then I took a square die that's slightly bigger, and I'll cut around that. I can then cut off the clouds, and this will fit nicely around that window on the front of our card. Next, I thought I'd show you how I created the rainbow that goes on the inside here, this mini rainbow. I took several circle dies that are all a little bit smaller than the last, and I cut them each from colored cardstock. I then took the circle die that's slightly smaller and line it up. You can see me line it up here and cut it through again. This will create little rings, very thin rings of the different colors. These thin rings will all fit inside of each other, forming a rainbow. We'll just cut the pieces in half, so we'll have two arches. So here you can see my orange and red rings, and I'll continue to do that with the other colors. So now I have a blue square that will be on the inside of our card behind the windows. On this, I'll start with the red circle and glue that down, and then put the orange, yellow, green, and so on next to it. Now you'll notice a lot of the circle is hanging off, which is good because I'll cut that extra off and save it for a rainbow on another card that I'll do in this video. This is one of the best ways to make rainbows and a great way to use your circle dies creatively and to use up your scraps. Okay, now let's put our card together. We'll first start with the first panel, the one that has the gold frame. On the little flap, I'll put some strong adhesive, and then I will add the white cardstock base. That's that white piece there. Before I had it blue, I changed it to white. It's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches with no score lines. All right, once I have that glued into place, we can add the other panel. So there's a flap on this one. I'll put adhesive on it and then line it up with the other side on the base. I also added my little square with the rainbow and made sure that that shows through the two windows when the card is closed. Now this next step you can skip if you want to, but I cut another piece of cardstock that is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches, and I'm gluing it to the back just so you don't see those seams. You really don't have to do this, but I thought I'd share it as an option in case you want the back to be smooth. Okay, so now let's take a look at the completed card. I did add sentiments onto the card from the message strip stamp set that I showed you earlier. Here you can see the Sunray in the background, the gold sparkle of the frame, and then we have the clouds that line up with our layering window technique, and also the rainbow inside. I did stamp a few little birds here and there. That's from the Sea and Sky stamp set that I'll be using again later. And the final card size here is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. Here is the message strip stamp set that I use quite a bit in this video. I really like the basic sentiments in this, and what's awesome is there are dies included to cut it out nicely. I didn't use the dies on these, I just used the stamps, but in my last video I used both. All right, let's do another mini slimline card, but in the same fold design that we just did. This time it was really quick to pull together because I just did some inking instead of a lot of die cutting. I'm starting with one piece of cardstock that is 10 1/2 inches wide and 6 1/4 inches tall, and I'm scoring it at 3 1/2 inches. Because we're doing a mini slimline card, we only need one piece to make this card. I will then score again, this time 3 1/2 inches from the last score line we did. So I'll score there and fold this in, and you can see our card coming together. The overall card size for this will be 3 1/2 by 6 1/4 inches. Now notice that kind of buckles there, so I'm just going to cut a little bit off that one side, that side on the right, less than 1/8 of an inch cut off there, just a little bit, and that allows the card to close nicely. No buckling happening at all. Okay, now we can do our die cutting. So I'm using a few of the looking glass dies. Here's this sailboat one, lining that up on the front of our card. I'll tape it in place, unfold the card, and then run it through my die cut machine so it just cuts through that one panel. Now I'll close the card and take the sun window die, and I'm going to line that up behind it. Remember that trick I did in the last one where I just lined it up behind it and then taped it down? Again, you could use the alignment tool or do the tracing trick, but I find this is easy. Now I will open up my card and run that through the die cut machine, and it'll cut a sun window on this portion of the card. Now I mentioned the alignment tools are great for getting the right position with these looking glass dies. I'm going to use it to add color. Super fast and easy to do. I'm lining up the square on the stencil, the opening on the stencil, right around our window on the front of the card. And I'm going to add some quick inking here. I'm using a Gina K blending brush and some soft pool ink from Hero Arts. After I apply that, I'll come in with some cornflower blue and just add darker color to the bottom. I did put a piece of scrap cardstock behind there just so you could see it a little bit better. Okay, now after inking the front of the card and cleaning off my stencil, I'm lining up the stencil with the sun window that we did on the other part of the card. So I'll just line that up, and this time I'm adding yellow inks. So I did a little bit of soft vanilla and then a little bit of butter bar towards the center of the sun. So this little window on the stencil is a bit bigger than the opening, so you end up with a colored frame around the window. Really easy and a great way to add a pop of color. I also used my markers to add a little bit of brown and gray to the sailboat so it would stand out also. I used a Stardust glitter pen to put a little bit of sparkle to the waves in the ocean, just because I always like to add some shimmer. For a sentiment, I reached for one of my older favorites, the Need a Hand stamp set. The Just Floating By to Say Hello is one of my favorites for ocean and fish cards. So let's take a look at the completed card. It is 3.5 by 6.25 inches. Here you can see the shimmer that I added to the waves in the blue water. And this is a very smooth card because we didn't add layers, we added inking instead. I also stamped I Miss You from the message strips stamp set that I showed you earlier. This one was so quick to put together and probably my favorite of the design, so I'll be sure to make some more. Okay, now one more using these looking glass dies, and then I'll show you how to do the layered window technique with basic dies. This one's very simple. There's just a window on the front and then the frame piece on the inside. This time I'm using the Hero Arts Looking Glass Windmill Tulips set. I told you there were a bunch of these, and you can see the fun little layered scene that it creates. This time I'm starting with 3 white cardstock squares. These squares are a little bit bigger than our dies. From the center of each of those squares, I'm die cutting the different looking glass dies in this set. Once I have all 3 cut, I can line them up on top of each other, and we have a great layered scene with a nice little frame around the outside edge. I use my Copic markers just to add some color to these die cuts. We're going to add a frame on top, so don't worry if you get onto the outside frame. Doesn't matter at all. Just add some quick coloring. Watercolor would be pretty too. Now I want to create just a plain square frame to put on top to give it a finished look. So I'm using the same basic square that I used to cut the big white squares. Then I'm taking the tulip window die, any of them would work, and putting it right in the center. I then am rotating that to cut the square edge from the other side too. So basically I'm cutting the center out to be just the right size to create a basic white frame. You could have used 2 square dies to do that, but I didn't want to go fishing for the perfect size square for the inside, so this was an easy trick. To create a sky, I used the Hero Arts Sea and Sky stamp set. This is the one I used throughout this video for the little birds too. I'm using the large layer cloud images here just to add a little pop of blue to the background of our little windmill scene. I'm using the solid stamp first and stamping that with soft pool ink, which is a very light blue. Then I'm coming in with the layer. It's really easy to line it up. And at first I stamped this with white pigment ink, but it really wasn't showing up enough on that super light blue. So I decided instead to add Hero Arts Satin Pearl Embossing Powder. That will make that layer a little pearly shine. And I thought that would work great for a soft cloud background. There you can see that pearly shine with the soft blue. Now we can glue our frame together. I'm gluing together the layers of the windmill and the tulips, and then I will glue that onto the cloud that we just stamped and embossed. After I've glued it onto that, I can trim off the excess, and there we have a soft sky behind our windmill. And remember the plain white frame, we can glue that on top to give it a finished look. I created a top folding 4.25 by 5.5 inch light gray note card, and I stamped a Hero Arts background stamp on it with light gray ink. But my stamp was still a little dirty, so it turned out pink, but that's okay, it matches the tulips. Now I have a slightly larger square die that I'm cutting a window from the front of the card. I'll run that through my machine, and then in the inside, we can glue our little frame. Now I noticed the front of my card was pretty thin. It wasn't very sturdy because we cut such a big chunk of it out. So I added another white panel with the square die cut just into the inside so it would be a little bit stronger. That way our card will stand up. Okay, so let's take a look at the completed card. I did add a sentiment from the message strip stamp set that I showed you earlier, and I stamped a little bird in the sky. There you can see the pearly shine on our clouds. When you open it up, you'll see the frame still, and there's room on the bottom to write your message. I did carefully take my card apart and add a piece of white cardstock on the inside behind the frame. Sometimes I change my mind, and if you're careful, you usually can make it work. Okay, now for my card example using basic circle dies. If you have any basic shapes in a stacking die set like squares, rectangles, or circles, or hearts, or stars, you can do this technique. This is another A2 card, but an accordion fold. Before we did a slimline accordion, now we're doing an A2 card. This time I'm starting with 3 pieces that are 4 3/4 inches by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm scoring at 4 1/4 on all 3 of them. Now this time I am again doing a blended color, so I'm doing white, light pool, pool, and dark pool. But you could make each panel the same color if you wanted to. Next I have 3 circle dies. Again, you can do whatever shapes you want. We're starting with the front panel and the largest of the circle dies. So this front panel, it does have that little flap over on the left-hand side. I'll tape the circle to the top center and run it through the die cut machine. The next panel is the lightest blue color, and it has the flap on the right-hand side. But remember how I like to trim a little bit off the other side? Doing that here. So about 1/8 of an inch less than that off the straight edge. And there you can see how they fit together nicely. So I'm lining those 2 centers up so the flaps are sticking off on the 2 sides. And I'll trace the circle window. That way I know where to line up the next die. Thinking about it now, I could have used the die and just taped it right there in the center instead of doing the pencil, but you know, you live and learn. Okay, so now I'll tape the medium-sized circle right at the center of that, run that through our die cut machine, and erase the pencil line. Let's check our work and make sure those 2 windows line up nicely. This is the same process I did with the first fish card. We're just doing a different size. Okay, now for the next panel, make sure your flap is over on the left. Trim a little bit off the other edge. And now we can line those 2 up. You can see the 2 flaps sticking out. And we're going to add the smallest circle to the center. Again, I'm tracing it, but really you could have just glued it right there in the or taped it right there in the center of the window. So this is our smallest circle die. So we started with the front panel with the biggest circle die, and we moved now to the third panel with the smallest circle die. And now you'll see how these will all line up together. The last piece we need here is the base of our card, which I'm doing in the darkest color. This is 5 1/2 inches tall and a little bit more narrow than 4 1/4 inches. Now we can glue everything together just like the first card. We're putting glue along the flap on our first panel, that's the white one, and lining up the second panel right up against that crease. And you'll see the windows start to line up nicely. Now on that light pool piece, we have a little flap sticking out. We'll put adhesive on the top of that and come in with our next panel and line up the edge of that with the crease on the light pool piece. So you can see our accordion fold coming together, same as that first card. And now the last piece to glue on, this little flap right here, putting adhesive on that, and then that solid blue piece that we just cut to be 5 1/2 inches tall and a little bit more narrow than 4 1/4 inches. Okay, now it's time to make the scene that goes on the inside. I'm taking one of the larger circle dies and cutting it from blue cardstock, and that's where I'm going to put my scene, on that little circle, and that'll go inside the card. I used the looking glass die that has grass, and I cut it from green cardstock. Then I used my circle die, the same one that I used to cut that blue circle, and I turned that grass piece into a circle. You see the little circle along the bottom instead of square. And I cut a few of those so I could have a little bit of layered grass along the bottom of our circle. So I'm gluing those layers of grass together here, and then I'll glue it right on the bottom of the circle. But first I need to add the rainbow. Remember those leftover half of circles of rainbow that we had from our first card? Well, I'm using those here. You only need half of a circle to create a rainbow. So after I've glued down all of my little rings here, I can add my grass on top and trim off all of the excess. To finish it off, I added our little scene onto a white circle that's slightly bigger, just for a nice mat. I thought it'd be fun to add some clouds, so I used the looking glass die that has clouds on it, and I just cut the clouds off. I love to find little bits and pieces of die cuts that I can use together creatively to create new scenes. Once I've added those, I can trim off the excess, and there we have a tiny little rainbow scene for the inside of our window. You could have created a big scene on that inside piece, and then the window would only show a little bit of it, and then it'd be a surprise when you opened it and see the inside. But I thought it was fun to do these little frames on the inside. So there you can see how it lines up nicely. Let's look at the completed card. It is 4 1/4 by 5.5 inches. And I did add a little bird in the sky from the Sea and Sky stamp set, and a little bit of shimmer to the rainbow. Here's how the card opens up, and I did stamp a greeting on each of the panels just to make it a little more interesting. And I left plenty of room to write a message on the inside. There you can see all the details we have in our mini scene. So this example shows you can use basic shape dies to create this layered window effect. You just need dies that vary in size a little bit. That's why stacking die sets are really handy to have. All right, if you're interested in anything I used today, they are linked below in my YouTube description. You can go to my blog for photos of all these cards and even bookmark them and save them for future reference. At the end here, I'll have a couple other videos that are related that I hope are helpful to you also. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you again very soon.